DBT and the Dharma, episode 4. We're here. We're doing it. Tell us, what does episode 4 have in store?
We are going to talk about the stop skill from dialectical behavioral therapy, and that's going to get us into a fascinating discussion about craving.
I hope it's fascinating.
Oh, I think it's going to be good. Who doesn't want to talk about craving?
Most people.
I'm craving talking about craving.
We love it.
So the stop skill in DBT, we're including it as we journey through mindfulness, the mindfulness unit in DBT, even though in the original book, Marshall Linehan introduces it in the distress tolerance unit. But the lineage of this skill comes from mindfulness-based stress reduction.
Mm-hmm.
This is a set of tools developed by John Kabat-Zinn. And then there's further lineage that goes back, but okay. So that's why we're doing it here. So what is it? The stop skill is such a powerful skill when you feel like you're getting dysregulated. So if you are in a situation where, like, this is a favorite way people use it, is you're with your family and somebody says something that just triggers you. Mm-hmm. And you're ready to be 16-year-old again and fly, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
I'm not,
mm-hmm.
leave the table,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Little temper tantrum.
Like, I don't know about you, but when you're 40, that's not a good look.
Not as cute.
No, not so cute. So the stop skill is literally you think, stop. So when you feel yourself getting into emotion mind, mm-hmm. your emotions are starting to take over the show and you're about to do something impulsive, you just stop.
So when reactivity shows up, when you have a reactive thing you want to do because of emotion mind, mm-hmm. or does that happen with rational mind too?
I think rational mind doesn't tend to be as impulsive.
That checks out.
You know what I mean?
Okay, so but when you're noticing like an impulse arise, mm-hmm. the stop skill is literally just being like, hold off.
Stop. So that's the first part. So it's an acronym.
Of course it is.
Because we love acronyms in DBT. They love lists in Buddhism. We love acronyms in DBT. So the S stands for stop. Mm-hmm. The T stands for take a breath,
Classic.
Step back.
Yeah.
Right? Just so you're kind of it's that mindfulness thing where you're going mm-hmm. You're like, I was in it, now I'm observing it.
Got it.
Right? So that's the take a step back, mm-hmm. and then you observe what's going on in my body, like what are the physical sensations happening, what are my emotions, what emotions am I feeling, mm-hmm. so we're kind of labeling. And then you observe your thoughts. Oh, okay, this is the nature of the thoughts that I'm having, right? I'm having thoughts about I'm feeling angry. I'm having thoughts about revenge. I'm having thoughts about it's not fair. I'm having thoughts about justice. So, but then the thing that we're going to kind of really explore is then you pay attention to your action urge.
What is an action urge?
It's the thing you want to do.
Oh.
So like what I want to do is I want to get up and I want to tell these people off. I want to tell them it's not fair. I'm going to tell them I have changed even though I'm not acting like it.
Got it.
That kind of thing, right?
Okay.
So you just notice what the action urge is. What is it that you want to do? And then, Beans is visiting.
This
Beans,
is good.
Do you want to come up? Nope.
I'll get there.
The cat's here. So, Action urge. Thank you. I'm distracted by the cat. I'm hoping he's going to come on camera so you can see how cute he is.
Cat.
That's my craving right now.
Oh, okay. This is great. This is really good though. Okay, so your action urge is to do what?
My action urge is to stop talking and be like, Beans, come here. Because I want you to see how cute he is. He'll probably do it on his own though.
I love it.
So then here's the thing, right? You pay attention what the action urge is, and then you're going to make an assessment.
Okay.
Is this effective? And you think through, what are my short-term goals in the situation? What are my long-term goals? So maybe at that family dinner, your short-term goal is to get through the dinner and have people not think you're crazy. Yeah. Your long-term goal is maybe to have a better relationship with your extended family. And so you check in and you're like, if I flip out right now, is that going to be effective for my short-term goal and my long-term goal? And when it's not, then you proceed mindfully in a different direction, right? Now, to be clear, the stop skill doesn't, if you're like, stop, I'm feeling impulsive, doesn't mean that your action urge is wrong.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Sometimes your action urge is spot on. You know what? This is not a good situation. I'm going to excuse myself.
Yeah.
But you might do it in a more skillful way.
Instead of being super reactive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good distinction to make.
Yeah,
that's real important. So that reminds me, you're talking about action urge, all that stuff, that reminds me of craving.
Yeah, I know.
Right? So that's what we kind of talked about with this was craving.
Right, because when you have an action urge, it's like you're craving to do something specific. Like you're like, I have to
do this thing, because if I don't do this thing, all these bad things will happen, or if I do this thing, all these good things will happen. Craving is a staple in Buddhism, and we know this.
Well, because it's the root of so much suffering.
It's the root of so much suffering. Well, the Buddha would argue it is the root of all of our suffering. So if we go to the Four Noble Truths, right? So the first noble truth.
So wait, what are the noble truths? What is that?
You're right. So the Four Noble Truths are that, it was like the Buddha's first thing he taught after he got enlightened.
Okay, so this is like one of the first major teachings.
First major things that Buddha said. He was like, oh dang, I've learned all of this cool stuff. I'm going to go teach people, and this is what he starts to teach, is this whole Four Noble Truths situation. I don't want to go into all four of them because I think it's amazing teachings, but it's a little too deep for today.
Right, and we're just going to do one thing at a time.
One thing at a time.
One skill, one teaching.
That's it. So the second noble truth is that all of our suffering is caused from craving. So think about that for a second. Think about some of the most intense suffering you have ever experienced.
I'm usually craving for something to be different than it is.
Exactly. Or even you're craving, some of the most intense experience I've ever had has been around my job, around wanting to be farther ahead in my career than I am, or things like that.
But isn't that wanting something to be different? Or
It's a little bit of both,
right?
So again, this is the dialectic of it, is that both can be true. I can be craving for something to be different than it is, and craving to become something all at the same time, right?
The cat.
I love Beans.
I know. He did walk by. I think he walked by. I'm now craving for him to stop making noise.
Yes, but you're noticing it.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing. When I started to learn this practice of the second noble truth, it was like, okay, I'm going to notice the craving. No, really, this is a good thing to work with. So you might be able to hear Beans making noise.
Oh my God.
Right? So he's pushing things off the table.
All of our production stuff. Beans, come here. Come on.
But you start to hear a sound, and you're like, oh, that shouldn't be there. And so then you crave for that sound to be gone. And so it makes us do an action to try and get the sound to stop.
Yep.
Right? And so craving is not only craving to not have something like the noise from Beans, but it's also craving for this podcast to be professional and good.
Right.
And so it's this craving to become as well. So craving in itself is this very, we call it, the Pali Sanskrit word is tanha, which is translated loosely to an unquenchable thirst. It's an unquenchable thirst. It is a thirst to have something be different than what it is, or to not want something to be you know what I'm saying, right? Like, we just crave for things to be different. We crave for things to stay the same. Is it like,
I feel like when you say those words, unquenchable thirst, I feel like I know that. I feel like I know that, and it relates a lot, I think, to, one of the diagnostic criteria for BPD, for borderline personality disorder, is this very subjective thing called chronic feelings of emptiness.
Oh.
Right? And so chronic feelings of emptiness sound like a very close relative of unquenchable thirst.
Yeah.
Right? Where there's just something missing. Something is missing.
Yeah.
And you don't like, and you might have a fixation about how you're gonna.
That's it.
You're gonna right how there. You're gonna what that missing thing is, but even then, like it's temporary. It's very temporary. The satisfaction,
which we'll talk about in permanence in later episodes. But the craving thing is we start to notice the action urge. So let's work on an example here. So if we're walking through an example, what's a good one? Okay, the action urge I have to smoke, right? I've been trying to quit smoking. So when we walk through this whole situation, right, I notice the action urge arise. So what the stop skill is telling me to do is to stop, take a breath,
and then observe what's happening in your body.
So observing the unpleasant sensation that I'm trying to fix, which to me is like a little bit of restlessness in my body,
like an itchiness.
And then what's the last one?
So then you notice the emotion,
probably restlessness. I think that fits. Yeah. And then
the thoughts. What are the thoughts?
The thoughts, if I have a cigarette, this will go away. And that's where the craving comes in. So I now have a craving to have a cigarette, not because the cigarette's great, it's my relationship to the cigarette. The cigarette is going to make my unpleasant situation,
your unpleasant sensations go away.
So craving is trying to just push away what we don't want, cling on to what we do, and that's really it. And all of our suffering can be traced back to those things. It's just not wanting things to change or wanting them to change.
Right, it's that wanting. Because you can do, like, I sometimes I've done a meditation. Maybe we'll do, for every episode we've got a meditation available on the Insight Timer website or app. And one of the meditations I like to do with people is just noticing your wanting. Like I used to give them tally tickers so they could, every time you notice the wanting. And sometimes in a 5-minute period, you can have like really 70 conscious thoughts of like, I want it to be colder in here. I want it to be, like all the things that you want to have be different than they are in this moment.
And then craving takes it a step further. So when we want something, because there's a lot of people always come to me and they say like, well, Maddie, does that mean I just shouldn't want to succeed? Does that mean I shouldn't want this or that? Is wanting bad? And wanting is not the issue, it's craving. It's thinking that either holding on to that thing or getting that thing is going to create lasting happiness. We're going back to our happiness stuff, happiness versus contentment. Right? Craving is a very visceral, like, big feeling of, I need this, right? So I find that craving really is when that wobble happens between I want and I need, right? And so when we have an action urge, I think when it's loudest is when it starts to pass through the I want
into I
need to do this,
which is so emotion mind, because I need has an urgency to it, right? I need to do it, and I need to do it right now, right?
Exactly. And so, and this goes for so many things. Like, how many times have I been there's different flavors of craving, or tanha as we call it, that unquenchable thirst. Craving to become is one big one. Craving for non-existence and craving for existence. Those are
wait. Okay, this is very big. Okay, craving to become. What is that?
Craving to become. The way I like to think about it is this has hit me a lot with the work stuff that I've been talking about, wanting to be somebody who has a Grammy, wanting to be the #1 self-help podcast on Apple, right? Like wanting to be something, and it's the story that comes. There's a lot of self in that craving to become.
That's so ambitious. Those are very ambitious.
I don't know. They're just the first things that came to my mind. But think about it. How often does that turn in?
I want to be something different. I want to.
Yes. I want to become. I want to become this.
Is that like a distinction between like, I want to do a self-help podcast because I want to help people
Mm-hmm.
versus okay, we need to cut for a second.
Cut.
Beans. This is not working.
Beans.
He was so good last time. Do you want to, let me kick him out.
We're kicking Beans out,
I think
Florence.
Florence, we're going to kick Beans out.
Here, I can get him so you don't have to get up.
Well, I got to put him in, I need to put him, if I put him on the other side of this door, he'll cry.
Oh, okay.
Go see
I
your
got to
mom.
put him, do you need to go potty or something, buddy? No.
Florence, you're really great for editing all this stuff out. I really appreciate you. You're just a gem. What a cutie boy.
He is so cute.
All right.
Okay.
While we still are gonna cut all of this out, remember if you aren't, to circle back to the P of stop.
Oh, circle back to the,
We haven't covered the P.
oh, we haven't,
it.
proceed mindfully. Okay.
I don't think it needs to have been done yet, but
But we
Okay,
need to make sure we
thank
get
you.
it.
we left off at O.
That is awesome.
So I think what I want to do is just be real about that I just kicked Beans out of the room. Because I feel like that's so perfect for this.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
You want to clap?
all right, so we're picking up with the
Craving to become.
craving to become. Okay, so we just paused and we're like starting again because I needed to kick Beans out of the room. I need to put Beans happily upstairs because in that craving,
Yeah.
or and maybe is this a want or a need? Like I want this podcast to be good.
Mm-hmm.
Also, don't want to talk too much about the podcast itself.
But no, it's
And I thought, I was like, oh, it'd be so cute to have the cat here because everyone loves a cat, right? And then he was like restless and distracted. He was having craving of his own, right? And then that was distracting me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so is that craving or is that just wanting? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and again, this goes back to saying so many people come to me and they say, is wanting bad?
Yeah.
Is wanting bad? When do I know wanting is craving?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I know if I act on my wanting, am I giving in to craving and all this other stuff? And I like to make this distinction that there is a big difference between craving and wholesome desire.
Ooh, wholesome desire. Oh, tell us about wholesome. Doesn't that sound? Well, it's wholesome, so it must be okay.
Wholesome desire is this: you want the episode. You want to feel. It's not even so much you want the episode to be good. You want to feel present.
Yeah, I want to be present, and it was pulling
You want
me
to be
out.
present.
Yeah.
And for me, the distinction between craving and wholesome desire has a lot to do with how much story there is behind it.
Okay.
So if there's a lot of story behind, I need to kick Beans out because if I kick Beans out, then the podcast will be better. And if the podcast is better, then I'll be able to make this much money. And if I make this much money, I'll get this
Are we
much
gonna
house.
make money off this podcast?
I don't think so. But do you see what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
like there's so much story attached to it, which
Yeah.
makes it...
I think the story in my head is like, oh, it's gonna be distracting. People are gonna think it's unprofessional.
Right, okay, so that's the story. Now, it's not necessarily like an unwholesome desire to want to have a professional podcast.
Right.
Now, flip side,
It feels very wholesome to
it
me.
feels wholesome. But it's because you took that minute
Mhm.
to be like, okay, you stopped.
Mhm.
You didn't realize you did it.
You know what? I literally did do the stop. I stopped, kind of checked in what's going on very, very quickly. This is the thing about the stop skill is you can do it very fast.
Mhm.
And so then the stop, take a breath, observe what's going on, which also includes observing what's going on in the environment and kind of checked against my goals. And I was like, this is actually not working. So proceeding mindfully meant like relocating the cat.
Oh, that's the P.
That's the P. So S, stop. T, take a breath, take a step back. O, observe all the things, including your goals for the
Mhm.
situation, and then you proceed mindfully.
Mindfully.
So it sounds like when you're doing that assessment of the action urge, one assessment that you can make is this craving or is this wholesome desire? This will be on the website.
Yes.
So when you're like, what was that wholesome thing that they were talking about?
Wholesome desire.
Wholesome desire. So when you're checking against your action urge against your goals, you can also kind of tune in, is this wholesome desire or is this craving?
And wholesome desire can turn into craving.
Oh, yeah, I can
obviously.
imagine. Yeah.
But so
can you define it a little bit more? So there's like a lot, maybe, well, I'm thinking for my DBT brain is there'd be a lack of urgency when it's, is that true?
I don't know if that's necessarily true for me. So like going back to that craving to become, let's go back to my career stuff. I'm a musician.
Yeah.
It's a big industry. I've been doing it for a long time. And so in the craving to become, there is a wholesome desire to make enough money to sustain my family, to sustain my, like, being able to eat food and like
and you want to make music.
And make music. It's a wholesome desire to want to do that. When it turns into, if I don't get this gig, there's a lot of anxiety to it. There's a lot of future tripping
with craving.
With craving, yeah, I'm noticing that. So with my career stuff, when I start to pull in the, okay, I need to get this gig so I can make this much money, and I need to make sure I get signed to a publishing deal, and the only way to do that is see how much chatter there is behind it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of like future tripping. There's a lot of going back into the past. There's a
like, if this doesn't happen, I'll never be happy.
Yes. Bingo. This lasting
or
content. Either one. But yeah, so going back to that craving to become, that's where it shows up for me the most. There's also craving for existence. And there's craving for non-existence.
Well, I mean, when you say craving for non-existence, what comes to mind for me is suicide.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? So I want to explore that a little bit, but first I want to understand what you're talking about. What in Buddhist teaching, what does craving for non-existence mean?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head with like any sort of suicidal ideation or things like that. It's craving for something to not be. Whether that's ourselves, whether that is...
so it can be craving for something else to not exist.
Totally, it can be craving for something else to not exist. Like the current conflict going on in Gaza, right, as we're recording this. That, I crave for that to not exist. Or a simple thing like
How is that not wholesome wanting?
So it is. It is.
You know, I mean, wholesome desire. We have a wholesome
when
desire.
When I start to spin into, okay, I need to like, when we start to write a story around it, nothing's ever gonna be good again. No one's ever gonna be free again. There's this craving, like,
I'm useless.
Yeah, I'm useless because I'm not helping.
Because I don't know how to stop it.
Right. So, but again, wholesome desire gives us an opportunity to see what we care about.
Okay.
Assessing values, like you were saying.
Okay.
And there's also craving for non-existence in really simple ways. Really, really simple ways. Like if I get a dish out while I'm at a restaurant and there's capers on it.
You don't like capers?
Oh, I hate capers.
I love capers.
I hate capers.
Love capers.
I get into that spot and it's, you know, it doesn't always turn into craving, but if I notice the craving to not exist for these capers.
I have the thing with green peppers.
There you go.
I do not want green peppers.
So I'm going to send it back.
Yeah,
right?
I don't want the green peppers.
So in my life, there's a lot of capers that I can't control.
How do you have so many capers?
I don't know. Well, that's what I'm
yeah, no, I get it. Sorry. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry for getting lost in the weeds.
I loved it.
Okay, but then let's get into the suicide thing. Because I think that often what happens with suicide is it becomes a craving. Right? So it's the craving to not exist. But it's because it's the escape hatch, right? So it's like if my pain is too intense, then people turn to suicide, to even the suicide fantasy. The fantasy of killing yourself gives you relief from the pain. So doesn't that mean that sometimes I guess the craving is to not have the pain.
Bingo.
Right?
Crushed it.
The craving is to not have the pain, and so then we're like, what's the solution? What's the solution? And we're grabbing for a solution. And
which causes us what? Suffering.
More suffering.
More suffering.
But isn't it, I mean, the idea is that it would be the end of suffering. But, I mean, but I think the truth is that most people who are suicidal, they don't really want to commit suicide. Or, I'm sorry, no, we're not suicide. They don't want to complete a suicide. They don't want to die. They just want to be in less pain. Let's go back. Florence, let's go back.
Yeah,
because
we're taking it back,
the
Florence.
commit is not good. So, okay, I'm going to just go back to the suicide thing. So, Florence, you can figure out where we start, but here we go. So, I think it's really important that we explore this craving to not exist and come back to the seriousness of suicidality and how that relates to the craving to not exist. So, from a DBT perspective, suicide is the solution to the problem of unbearable pain, right? So the pain is so intense that I want the pain to not exist.
Yeah.
And the only way that I can see for that pain to not exist is if I don't exist.
Yeah.
Right? And so one of the things we're doing with skills is we're trying to help you stop holding on to suicide as the solution to the craving of not having pain.
Yep.
Right? And give you other things that you can do, other ways to deal with the pain that are not so absolute.
Yes.
And permanent.
Yeah.
So, I know I'm just thinking about how we can use the teachings from Buddhism to kind of illuminate that.
Yeah.
Because my guess is that since people are interested in DBT, that there's going to be a lot of people listening who really struggle with suicidal ideation.
Oh yeah, same. That's what brought me to the Dharma in the first place, right?
Yeah, that's what brought me to DBT in the first place.
Exactly.
So, and I just want to say that I think for a lot of people, it's not so much that they crave dying as they crave not being in pain.
Yeah.
And
craving for non-existence as far as the pain, craving for non-existence as far as the current causes and conditions that you've accumulated. There's a lot to it.
So I'm just thinking about, for you, Maddie, and with your embrace of these teachings to help you come out of your suicidality, is there something about it sounds like mindfulness to me. Is like mindfulness, okay, it's the craving for non-existence is actually a craving for non-existence of the pain.
Yeah.
Non-existence of the conditions.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if there's a space in there, in that space of separating out from reactivity, to soften, to stop clinging to suicide as the answer.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of it for me is when I start to notice craving, it makes it a lot less personal.
I love that. We love things that make things not personal.
So when I start to notice, because really, again, it's not the thing, it's not the pain, it's my relationship to the pain.
Okay, explain that more.
So I've had a pain in my back for a couple weeks now, and when I twinge a certain way, I can feel it. And so the pain itself is not, it's painful, but it's not really causing me a whole bunch of debilitating stuff. The thing that causes me a bunch of debilitating things around it is the story, right? It's my relationship to the pain,
I know, because I've got this hip pain.
Craving for non-existence of this pain in my back.
Right, but a future trip, it's going to be, how long is it going to be here? It's going to be here forever. So, am I never going to be able to do these things
Which goes
again?
back to craving having a lot of story behind it.
Right, exactly.
Right, and so when I can notice, okay, I'm craving for this to not exist, and it's a simple example, because really the difference between want and craving, I think, is very fine, but you start to feel that craving of man, if I do not get rid of this back pain, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Everything's gonna be awful. There's so much to it. So it's really my relationship to the back pain that is the place where I can have some empowerment, is within that relationship. I can't change the back pain.
Right, and we are going to actually explore more related topics about suffering and pain.
Yeah.
In future episodes.
We'll talk about it. But for this,
we really want to get a handle on this craving.
When it comes to craving, I notice,
Mm-hmm.
okay, there's craving present.
Mm-hmm.
And when I notice that there's craving present, I can go, oh, craving's present.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this thing, have you heard about the crave wave?
Tell me about the crave wave.
The crave wave, it's like when
Sounds
craving...
like an advertisement for a soda pop.
It really does, but it's when craving arises. So right now I'm doing a lot with going back to cigarettes, right?
Mm-hmm.
When a craving for a cigarette arises or a craving to get rid of this pain arises, before I get reactive,
Mm-hmm.
before I reach for the cigarette, before I take a pain pill, before anything like that, I ride it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I ride this craving of like, okay, the craving is here, and I watch it, and I watch it get more intense, and then I watch it go away, and then I watch it get more intense again and go away. So it really is like a wave. It will kind of arise and pass, but being able to see it takes so much of the personal nature out of it, because while we're busy watching the craving arise and pass, it's hard to have a story behind it, in my opinion.
Oh, about like, I'm failing, I'm not good enough, or like, yeah. So we have a skill called in DBT called surfing the urge.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So you're riding the crave wave.
Crave
It's like East Coast and West Coast surfing.
Cowabunga.
So, okay. So then there's the third one is craving becoming.
Can we cut real quick, actually?
Yeah.
I'm curious. Something is...
Oh, shit. It's good.
Apparently, that's just my screensaver now. It's just a
Alarming screensaver.
very scary
very
screensaver.
mustard yellow. All right.
You're talking about action urge. Or not,
No.
you're talking about
Urge surfing.
urge surfing.
We were talking about, yeah, so you said the cowabunga thing. Okay.
Cowabunga.
So from cowabunga, Florence, here's what we'll pick up. Here. So we have the craving to become, craving for non-existence, which we've explored both of those, and then you had craving for existence.
Craving for existence, yeah. Which I think is really common. So craving for existence is, I wish I had more money. I need more money. When I get more money, then surely I will be happy.
I need love.
I need love.
Surely when I get a partner that loves me, surely when I have these friends.
So I'm going to do this to get that. Craving is...
But there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, like,
totally.
I mean, we have skills in DBT about like setting goals and taking action steps towards those goals. But I think what I hear you saying is there's a discernment of, is this a wholesome desire? And even like the way that you're approaching it, is it wholesome?
Yeah, exactly. So when we start to notice craving, we get space enough to be able to have discernment, to be able to tell if the action urge that is arising is that wholesome desire, or is that maybe unskillful? Is it skillful or unskillful?
Yeah.
Does it align with my long-term goals? So like if I'm... And values. So like if I'm in the forest and a bear shows up, there's probably going to be craving for me to run. And I'm going to take a minute and be like, what color bear is this? Is this the one that you run away from? If it is, I'm out.
Is it a grizzly bear or a black bear?
And then you notice and then you run. And so craving is not necessarily going to be something that we always don't we don't want to like listen to.
Well, yeah, we talk about that with your action urge, right? If your action urge, you're walking down a dark alley, is to put your keys between your fingers, that's because you've been taught that that's one way to protect yourself, and you don't have to second guess that. But you can check in and be like, okay, is this going to be effective?
Yeah, exactly. So when it comes to craving to become, or not, when it comes to craving for existence, it's really everywhere all the time, and it's just what ends up happening is once we have...
But I still don't think I understand what is it that's everywhere all the time. What is craving for existence? It's just wanting?
Like deep wanting. Like I'm craving for more money. I'm craving for a partner. I'm craving...
Okay,
But it's when I get that partner, then I'll be happy. Like I need that partner to be happy.
Different from craving to become?
That's a good question. What do you think?
Craving to become maybe is I am this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Craving for existence is I want these things.
Outside of myself. That sounds right to me.
Okay.
And that's the cool thing about the Dharma is it really is about how these concepts and teachings, what they bring up in you. And so everybody listening, everybody watching, when we talk about these things, it's really important to just take what resonates. The Buddha said, like, on his deathbed, see for yourself, be a light unto yourself. Don't take it just because we're talking about it. Go and see, go and try, go and ride the crave wave.
Actually, I love that because that's very in line with DBT, because Marsha Linehan isn't like, DBT is the be all end all for everyone all everywhere. It is that thing of like, take what's helpful. I think we talked about this in one of the other
Probably,
episodes.
and that's the cool thing about the Dharma too. It's uber repetitive.
Yeah.
And you're gonna hear us say
And
a
I think
lot
it
of the
bears
same things.
saying that, right? So as we're talking about these skills, as we're talking about the teachings from Buddhism, it is like, if you're like, okay, that thing about wholesome desire, that's the thing that's sticking with me. I wanna be tuning in, asking myself, is this craving or is this wholesome desire? That could be what you take away from this episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Or it could be, is this, or you just do the stop skill. But I do want to say a caveat, because I think I can just hurt in my head like a client thinking, well, it is wholesome desire when they're thinking with emotion mind. So it is that thing of like, in your wise mind, is this wholesome desire?
I love that.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, because I think the wise mind would be what gives it the wholesome piece.
Because I think it's easy to, like, in emotion mind, convince yourself, no, this is wholesome desire. But I think you can always feel that. So how are we differentiating wholesome desire from craving when you have an action urge? So you want to try and get into your wise mind, but sometimes it can be confusing. So what's the quality of it? What's the tone of it? I think is
It's restricted. It's tight.
Okay. So in the physical, as you're doing the stop skill, right? And you notice your physical sensations, you can notice, oh, it's tight, right? And if you notice your action urge feels urgent, and you notice your emotions have to do with, like, things to do with, like, I mean, you can, there's like a thing that feel like, when it's the, like, my precious.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, honestly, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a Lord of the Rings reference. Of the yeah. So noticing that, and if it's a wholesome desire, it feels like it would be much more open, like that willing. In DBT we teach willing hands.
Okay.
Willing hands is when your palms are open. It's like, and again, we'll get into non-attachment in another episode.
Yeah.
But it's that, like, sort of holding things a little bit more loosely, being a little more open to the flow of where things go. And also, I think being very, very clearly connected with your deeply held wise mind values.
No, I think that's a wonderful way to put it. But yeah, I mean, yep.
So the action step, we like to have an action step
Like
for each episode.
for you to do.
Right. So I think the action step would be to practice the stop skill, right? And if you're kind of a little bit confused about that, again, we'll have on the website, on the www.dbtforlife.com, in the DBT and the Dharma section, we'll have it spelled out. Stop, take a breath, observe what's going on, check in with your values, your goals, and then proceed mindfully. So that's an action step that you can practice. And one way to practice that is to set stop reminders on your phone.
Oh.
So if you set little reminders for you to just stop and drop in and do all that, this is a practice, right? It's a mindfulness practice. Or anytime you stop at a stop sign, you could say, okay, I'm going to stop and do the stop. So that's one actionable item. I think the other thing is just checking in. Is this craving or is this wholesome desire? And noticing, like, especially because, you know, sometimes when it's the big emotion mind things, like, it gets confusing. But if you notice with smaller things, is this craving or is this wholesome desire? It's kind of like, do I need to nourish myself or am I trying to numb myself?
Oof, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's a great way to say that. Absolutely. So those are the takeaways.
Fabulous.
I love talking about craving. It's a great time.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
Crushing
Maddie.
it.
All right. I will see you in the next episode.
Catch you on the flip side.